Amrit, thank you very much for coming on my podcast. I'm very excited to have you on. So I want to introduce you as broadcaster, author of Desi And Desires, blogger and model as well. But I wanted to start off with a question, going back to your childhood, and I'd like to ask, tell me what beauty meant for you growing up.
Well, hi Sharon, and firstly, thank you so much for having me on. Interesting question. So beauty growing up, and I don't think this is any different to what anyone else thought growing up. I used to think that beauty meant, glamorous, like makeup. I did associate it with being thin, fair-skinned, having the perfect sleek hair, not wearing glasses or braces. I never had braces, but I wore glasses. I just thought it was all of those things that I wasn't growing up. Somebody with everyone in my school. I grew up in Northampton, which is a very white town. I didn't really have any Asian friends at all. And everyone in my class had blonde hair, and I used to think that because mine wasn't blonde, I wasn't pretty, or I didn't look like them. Because when you're young, you don't understand that sort of Western features are very different to what being brown is. And I thought because I'm not that, I'm other, that I wasn't pretty, or I would never look like those people, or never feel what they feel because, they're pretty. And I guess that could bring on a whole different conversation around pretty privilege. But yeah, that's kind of the way that I associated beauty. And I always felt that it was other than me.
Yeah, I think a lot of women, a lot of young girls even now would still think that. Why do you think you felt like that?
And one of the biggest reasons, I think, is because I was the only one that looked like me. Apart from my sister going to the same school and my cousin, we were the only brown kids. We were the only ones that had Asian hair, which I've straightened mine right now, but let's be honest, it's frizzy.
Yes, I've straightened mine as well. It's really frizzy.
Yeah, and I wore glasses. I was always taller than a lot of the other kids at school, and I just didn't look like them. So I think because of that, it conditioned me to think that that's what beauty was. And also just confidence as well, which can be a reason of seeing other children or people around you that don't look like you. So because you look different, you can start to think that, oh, that's weird, that's not normal, that you look different, and that can affect your confidence. So I think I used to be quite timid and shy when I was very young, but in my head I knew that I had lots to say, and I knew that I had this brilliant personality. But when you're young, you think, you have to sort of hide all of that because of you looking different and stuff. And I think my confidence and everything just grew as I grew. As you get older and you experience different things, and life experience teaches you to be other than what you think. That's kind of where I got to today.
Yeah, and I think as well, I remember growing up, I totally connect with what you're saying, but also I think for me, a lot of TV, film, posters, even at the bus stop, like so many media outlets out there that didn't have someone like me and you, like the representation wasn't there. So I think for me, that was a major part, not just seeing me, but not even seeing me on TV, not even seeing me on, do you know what I mean, in stories. Even now, like the children's stories, they're really starting to like sort of be different colours and be like a diverse sort of diverse characters. And I think that for me was major. But also I think, how do you feel? What do you think about the attitudes of beauty was growing up? Sort of like from friends and family. Did you get any sort of pressures at all?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be another part to my question you asked earlier, definitely around kind of what you are taught around you, so whilst no one perhaps isn't doing it to be spiteful, it's just ingrained in how they think about things. And a lot of that in the South Asian community, we know people don't necessarily understand why they say these things, but we've heard it so much in music, in Punjabi music. I am Punjabi, so that's predominantly what I know. And in films, Bollywood, you're always looking at the fairer skinned heroine. She's glamorous, pretty and fair skinned, and she's thin.
Yeah, and the villains are dark skinned.
Yeah, exactly. And where did we see, like, still now to this day, very much in Indian cinema, music videos, all of that stuff, even the lyrics, you're not hearing anyone talk about, you know, the curves on her or seeing a larger lady. You know, you might get that in rap music where they're talking about her thick thighs and the curves on that ass, but no one's celebrating that in our sort of Punjabi in music. So it's like you always hear about the patala lak and things like that, and that's kind of how you imagine beauty as well, because of what you're hearing around you. And you know, I just think that that was always quite a sad thing, and a conversation that would always be had in sort of our house around, you know, my mum still does it to this day, and me and my sister both call her out on it, where she'll say, oh, she's so pretty, look how skinny she is. I'm sorry, that's not a compliment. And you know, the word skinny also has its own negative connotations.
It does.
And also, like, you know, hearing how fair somebody is does not justify how pretty or beautiful they might be.
Yeah. No one talks about personality. I know that's something like, I know there's a physical, but you know, when you do fall in love, real love, you're actually falling in love with that person. You know, you're like their passions, you know, the way they speak, the way they articulate, you know, the way they love. You know, we don't celebrate that anymore either, I don't think.
No, and I think I remember hearing like comments from people, and what this is actually quite recently. Like an auntie came up to my mum at some like party or a function that we were at, and she said, "Your daughter is so pretty. If she just lost a bit of weight, she'd, you know, like she'd get married." And my mum was like, "Okay, thanks, auntie." And then my mum told me, and I was like, who is this auntie? Where is she? Why? Like, tell me. Like, I was ready to have a go at her. Like, my mum told me afterwards. But not that I love calling people out on it, but I do think, you know, as we become a lot more woke and people understand things a lot more, and we're talking about it and we're brave enough to talk about it, I do like call people out on saying these things, because it's not necessarily right, you know. Being
Absolutely.
thin does not make you pretty or any worthy than being other.
But we are allowed to challenge people that put us
Yeah.
down. Like, I think that's what we forget. And I actually recently said that, you know, like, I think the generations, particularly the generation, you know, I've been brought up in, it was always like, respect your elders and make sure, you know, you don't ask for a drink, you wait to be offered, you know, don't take your coat off until, you know, you're asked to, you know, like real strict sort of guidelines on like behavior. But, you know, there are times where we are allowed to say, sorry, can I finish what I'm saying? Because I was just going to cover that subject. You know, that was going to be the next stage of my discussion here. We are allowed to stick up, you know, we are allowed, when someone is putting us down because of our weight, you know, of our skin color, you know, racism, you know, the fact that we've got short hair and it's not beautiful and long, things like that. We are allowed as women to say, firstly, that is not right. I'm offended. Please stop.
Yeah. I just think, but I'm known in my family and just in general as the gobby one, or someone that's always got something to say or an opinion, because I think we are just a generation of, you know, correcting that behaviour, which we've seen it for so long, where people don't necessarily understand or realise the things that they're saying and what impacts that has. So I think growing up, you know, me and my sister, we are both like curvy girls, and we have always grown up being that, you know. So we always felt that we were different to our cousins, different to, you know, people that we saw in our community, because we didn't look like them. And you know, we grew up sort of feeling quite penalized for it, you know. We knew that people would say things in like you get in wider families or just in general. And you know, my sister in particular did not enjoy going to community functions, because she did hate that. Whereas I think I've always been like the old child, so I felt like, you know, I've been the one to sort of set examples and do stuff. And I have always felt like the protector out of me and my sister, to like fight for the cause, and you know, do stuff where it makes people understand and realise the things that they say.
And I think it's about ending that conditionalized behaviors as well, because as you say, like, your mum's probably been conditioned, the elders have probably been conditioned from when they grew up. So it's about ending that cycle, isn't it? that's for me is why I do this, and obviously why you do what you do as well. It's about sort of re-educating, and I know I heard you say you call out your mum, but it's that wider community as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of the kind of work that I do in terms of body positive activism and sort of, you know, so I'm a Models of Diversity ambassador, which is a charity who strive for diversity in the fashion industry. I also, you know, obviously I'm a broadcaster, so I'm constantly having these types of conversations. I've been on like numerous podcasts and articles and things like that, and just naturally, excuse me, sorry, because of that's like a part of my job and a part of who I am. I think a lot of the time in the community, people can see me as, which is very nice, like as a role model. So, you know, I know in Northampton, my small community, often parents can say to their kids to be like, oh, you know, Amrit's setting a great example or something, and saying those kind of things to them. And I hope like I can sort of make those young kids who have voices that they think that they can't share those opinions, or, you know, they don't have to think how their parents or grandparents have this outdated sort of view. Hopefully, like, they can feel like they've got a bigger voice, and that it's okay to have the opinions that they have.
Yeah, and they have the representation that is that reflects the world out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Amrit, so tell me probably the feeling or that moment that made you want to speak out more. Was there a time where, or a time period or a moment where somebody put you down, or somebody sort of made you feel quite low, like, you know, affected your self-esteem?
I can't really pinpoint a specific example, but I've always known that inside I've had a voice, you know, a story to tell, or things to challenge stuff upon. I've always known that that's just about me and my character. So I guess that's just always kind of been how I am. I've always known that I've been a little bit not like everyone else.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think I felt okay about that, you know, after some time. And as I grew older, I remember when I set up my blog, you know, no one I knew was doing anything like that. Back in 2011, I remember sitting at my university desk in my little bedroom and being like, yeah, I'm going to set this up because I knew I can.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it can be that self-belief. And I think that's what was the crux in my life, knowing that actually I can do it. You know, it's always been like an itch of mine that I knew I wanted to scratch, where I'm going to achieve something. It might not be anything at the time that I started the blog, you know, I had 0 followers, no one was reading it. And even today, it's not like it's not like, you know, a big social media, I'm not a social media star, but I just know that I've got a momentum, and I've got something that I'm passionate about, and I'm not going to let the amounts of likes or followers squash that. So yeah, I guess that's been the real bit of me where I've wanted to strive for more. In terms of being let down or put down, I think there's been multiple occasions, but I think what all of them have made me feel is that it took me a long time to realise and understand that no matter how I look on the outside, it doesn't change the person that you are on the inside. So I did a piece for BBC Three not long ago, talking about how, you know, you should not, and I hope people watching this can you know, really take this message on, but letting what you look like on the outside, how, you know, your hair, if you have spots, wear glasses, braces, if you're fat, have rolls, have stretch marks, any of that does not affect your intelligence, your worthiness, your ability to do anything that you want to, because, you know, that's your exterior, not your interior. And your mind and your body is what you've been gifted with. That's what God has given you, and you only have the one. So, you know, don't let those things get in the way of what you can achieve, because you absolutely can.
That's really lovely to hear. What was the most, you know, through your journey of you know, you've been an author, I say model, broadcasting, you've met so many people. What was the moment that's really empowered you when it's come to beauty or your or body image?
I think so. I've always known. Obviously, I look different because I'm plus size, you know, and I'm taller than a lot of people and things like that. That's just something that's fact, right? But I've never sort of sat and absorbed it and thought, oh, it's because of this, and you know, I just want to. Although I know it, I've never let that sort of affect me, and just carried on and do what I enjoy, do what I want to, do what I need to carry on with my day and achieve what I need to. But as I started to obviously do more of that in the media and generally grow and people see you more and more, I would get comments and people would say things like, oh, I love your confidence and you're so brave and all these things. And I used to think, oh, really? Like, people actually think that? Like, I can think as much as what I want to believe and think in my head is just my thoughts. But then when other people started, I heard that other people were saying these things back to me, I think that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is real, sort of thing. And I actually, like,
I'm making a difference.
Yeah, and I really appreciated the fact that this, obviously what I'm doing is helping people, or, you know, encouraging them, inspiring them, whatever that may be. And that really made me feel good. And sometimes I still do get those types of comments. I can remember walking into, so I also, as well as being a broadcaster and presenting, I also, majority of the time, work behind the scenes as a producer on various different platforms. And I remember walking into a podcast recording that I was producing, and the ladies on the panel had, I must have said something, or the way I said it and presented myself, one of the ladies said, oh my God, you're beautiful. Like, they were like, I love the way you look and what you're wearing and just what you just said there. And I was like, oh, what did I say? Like, and I just thought, oh, you know, this is the first time I'd met them, probably one of the first things I'd said, and it really struck a chord with them. And I just thought, oh wow, my presence really makes a difference. And I think that was a moment for me. I mean, that was only recently, but little things like that, I do keep those memories and sort of treasure them and remember that, how that made me feel, and know that that was because of me and not how I look or my size or my shape or whatever I may look like on the outside. It's what I can do.
Yeah, I think as well, what makes those sort of moments really special is that growing up, particularly my experience, there wasn't a lot of women empowering women, you know, and that was a huge deal. It definitely felt like competition. It always felt like, you know, a lot of women putting other women down. And I think that's what's amazing, especially, you know, what you're doing as well. You're not just sort of, you're inspiring, you're supporting, you know, you're empowering. Did you have a lot of women supporting you growing up?
I mean, I'm no psychologist, but it's just one of those things, like you said, where people think it's a competition, and it's almost like the survival of the fittest. Like, I have to do better than you. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, the fact is that some people just don't know how to celebrate others' like successes or happiness, or just generally be happy for other people. But I think I've grown up, I don't know whether you could put this down to religion or just general upbringing, but the way my mum in particular, and I think a lot of this comes from my nanny because she was a very spiritual lady, has just always taught us about honesty and integrity, and I think a lot of it has to come down to your own intention. You know, everyone feels a certain way. Of course, you know, I can be on social media and think, especially through lockdown, I thought, oh, I felt stagnant because I wasn't creating content, I wasn't doing stuff, you know, work was generally slower. And I thought, oh, I'm not doing this, but so-and-so has launched a podcast, so-and-so has done this and that. And you can see these things and you can sometimes think, oh my God, I haven't done it. And those feelings, you could become jealous, you can become bitter, you can become all of those things. But I think what my sort of upbringing and just the things that I remember around my nanny and just how my mum has always told us little things growing up, that, you know, if your heart is in a good place and you're, you know, and clean and your intentions are not bad, then that's okay. Like, of course I understand that I can feel those certain things around, you know, watching other people's success, and that's a natural part of it. But I think what you have to bring it back down to at the end of the day is, you know, you can still be happy for someone even though you feel those things.
Yeah.
So I think it's about drawing up balances of how you feel. So a lot of the time when you ask around, have I had that, you know, other women celebrating me, I think what my mum's taught me has always made me like think differently to other women, you know, and see a better and gooder intention in the relationships I have with other women. Because, you know, let's face it, girls can be bitchy and catty, and I just like to think that hopefully I'm not, and I can form those good relationships with the people. And obviously, you know, you met in my line of work, you end up knowing so many people. You know, I can meet someone and someone just say, oh, do you know Amrit? And they might know me or have heard of me. But as good as that is, but you also have like your own circle as well. And I think I've learnt how to form my own circle and have a trusted group of, if that's friends or like very close family, or, you know, sometimes it doesn't even need to be like a big thing. Sometimes work ideas, I'll just ask my sister, you know. Yeah. I'm very fortunate to have a very good relationship with my sister. I know that for some people, family doesn't mean the same thing. Yeah. But I think it's about that circle, whoever you choose to allow into that circle and into that safe space, and even an encouraging space. Sometimes I will share ideas or need some support from other females that are nothing to do with my family or friends, you know. Yeah. I'm fortunate to be a part of the Asian Women Festival, and we are a team of like 13, 14 like brilliantly talented, amazing women who sometimes I know that I can take an idea to, or ask questions, or, you know, just generally for what we're doing, ask something in that space and know that I'm going to be celebrated or encouraged, or, you know, they might even turn around and say, that's the wrong idea, but teach me how. So yeah. I do think, yeah, we have to
constructive back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing. What would you like to see more of when it comes to beauty or body image? What would you like to see more of?
I just think reality is so important. Like, you know, often I was having a conversation about this with Angel Sinclair, who's the founder of Models of Diversity, and we were talking about how plus size nowadays can often feel sexualized. And, you know, and you can, although somebody may be bigger in the campaigns, you'll still see, you know, their skin airbrushed and they're looking in a certain way, or posed in the perfect angle to give them an hourglass figure and stuff like that. And I think although, you know, they look great and it's good to see representation and that diversity, but at the same time, are we being as authentic as we possibly can?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to show things like skin texture, marks, stretch marks, you know, when you wear jeans, you're going to get an overhang and things like that. Like, just, you know, I think we have to, it's about, again, down to integrity and being as authentic as we can and just showing the real side to stuff. And I do try and show that in my sort of posts that I do around, like on Instagram, and if it's to do with fashion and stuff. So I'll often talk about my skin, because I've never, early in the past few years, I've started to get adult acne because I had a very bad reaction to the sunlight on holiday one time, and now I have very problem skin because of it, and it never ever used to get me down, but all of a sudden it has, and I will talk about that, or I will talk about, you know, my clothes or things like that. And I think, you know, creating those real conversations in these spaces is really important, because I sometimes worry about young girls in particular, but just young people, and how they use social media. I see it with my like younger cousins and family members, and how they can become obsessed with filters and looking a certain way through a lens, whereas in real life that's not the case. And I think it can be, as much as I love social media, I'm on it all the time, I am a obsessed like social media freak, but I think you have to be aware of what you're doing. So I know that I'm those things, and I know that I can log out of my accounts, put my phone away, and I'll be okay. But some people develop this, you know, itch where they just need to post what they're doing every 5 seconds, or you know, and everything has to be with a filter, because they're like creating this mask and this like second persona of them online, and I think that can be really harmful. I think we need to understand a lot of that, and I hope one day, should I ever become a mum, I can, you know, teach my kids about that, because it's just so important, because social media is new and there's no, you know, the guidelines and stuff are being made as everything happens. No one is an absolute expert, as much as they might call themselves it. It's a new thing that's forever growing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real conflict here that I can sort of see. And I know when I go out to buy something, say a particular mascara or say a pair of jeans, because of the branding that these companies use, I'm hoping that if I wear this particular mascara or these particular jeans, I'm going to feel something, and I'm going to, you know, feel empowered, or these eyelashes are going to make my eyes bigger. So I don't have to wear fake ones. So, you know, so I feel like, for me, because part of social media for me, and part of buying something is an escapism.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is like it's a classic marketing strategy. And I remember, so I studied English language and literature, and I remember learning that what you've just spoke about putting on a pair of jeans and feeling a certain way or looking like this, is part of there was a theorist called Fairclough, and he invented that what that creates is something called synthetic personalization. So when you see these adverts, you will read it or see it and like personalize it to yourself. So well, it might be I always think this about shampoo, because everyone's hair texture is their hair texture, but you see these bottles of shampoo and it's like, oh, for the sleek, luxurious long locks, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna have that shampoo and my hair will look like the model on the cover.
Yeah.
But when you wash it, as you know, it doesn't automatically go like that. There's styling involved, there's products, there's lighting, there's all of those things that make her look that way. It's not just the bottle of shampoo.
Yeah.
As good as that shampoo might be, that end result is because of a lot of other things. And that's what these marketing things make us forget.
Well, this is it. So, like, how do we get that balance? Because people do want an escapism, you know, especially when in this sort of this sort of current situation, pandemic. So we need that balance, right? We need that balance of escapism, but yet, you know, a reality check with that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying go around being a cynic,
No.
and, you know, be like, oh, well, that's just going to be rubbish because it's this, it's that. But at the same time, you know, of course, everyone wants to treat themselves with a little, whether that's food or a spa treatment or just going for a walk or whatever you want to like buy and treat yourself. Yeah, there's obviously the that sort of nice side to it, but at the same time, be real about what you're investing into and what that is, and you just know that, all right, oh, we're going to have this nice dessert today because it's going to be my pick-me-up. Know that that's just for the time that you're going to be eating it. Afterwards, those endorphins and things are going to wear off, and just be real about what you're doing. So, you know, buying these things is not like a lifetime investment. They're going to be quick fixes.
Absolutely. What is your sort of, how do you see your future? I mean, you're sort of a model, and you say plus size, but I sort of, I don't like that word plus size anymore.
I never used to like that size. So when I first started using it, I'd be like, oh, I don't really like it. I actually have a jacket on the back of my door, which I can't go and get right now, but I won a competition with Simply Be to design a jacket slogan. And on the back of it, it says, it's not plus size, it's my size. Because, you know, I feel like although we have these great opportunities, at the same time, once again, what diversity means, or, you know, the idea of diversity is to show inclusion and not necessarily put people in boxes. And whereas I always think that being plus size puts you in that box, you know, whereas the term to be a model should just be a model regardless. But I do use the term now. I think I've got more used to saying it. It rolls off the tongue a lot more than it used to. I used to have a real issue with it. But sorry, back to your question in terms of how do you see yourself?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess for me, it comes back down to integrity. I talk about it a lot, but for me, I'm grateful that I can have this opportunity and do what I do in terms of the modelling, in terms of my broadcasting career, in terms of, yes, I've written a book. Will I write another one? Who knows? I think one of these things is I'm not obsessing over the fact that this is what's become and how successful I am in those areas. You know, I don't see myself becoming a plus size supermodel, you know, like Tess Daly and Tess Holiday and things like that. Like, I don't see that happening. If it does, great. But if it doesn't, I am happy in the place that I am. Should more opportunities come, let's see what happens. If they don't, I'm happy with what I've achieved. And I'll just continue trying to just be me. And, you know, life throws different things at you, which is what I learned in the past year. My dad got cancer, and I ended up having to slow down a lot of my work, and just be there to care for him and care for my family, and be around a lot more. And I did miss out on some things, but at the same time, I just knew that life is taking me in a different way. And I think it becomes, you know, that whole metaphor around one door closing and another one will open. I think you just have to always appreciate and treat life as such, because you don't know what's going to happen. And I guess that could be a part of what our religion teaches us in Sikhi as well. But I think it's just a whole outlook on life. You as much as it's great, and I always say, to have a plan or an idea or some kind of drive for your ambition, just know that getting there is always going to be the fun part, where you don't know what might happen, and just ride it, you know, enjoy the ride, because you don't know what's going to happen, and appreciate all the things that you can achieve or not achieve on the way, because they will teach you things.
Amrit, thank you very much. You've been amazing and very inspirational, and I'm really honoured that you've come onto my podcast as well. Thank you so much for taking a risk and taking your time away from what, you know, the amazing things that you're doing or working.
That's all right. Thank you so much. It's allowed me to sit down and have a cuppa and a nice chat with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.